this will be a dialogue. Is that correct? Not a monologue? You guys are going to talk back to me? Okay, all right. If not, Noah is the designated speaker. So if nobody speaks up, we're just going to call on Noah to answer everything. Do y'all want to do that to Noah? Uh-oh, Noah. So I appreciate you all being here for Bible class. Good-looking class for Bible class. So good to see each and every one of you. And so I'm glad to be here. This is my second time now that I thought about it. It's my second time in Iowa. But the first time I was just passing through coming from Seattle to go back to Cincinnati. I was driving at the time. But it's good to be in Iowa. And so it's good to be here with you all. And so without any further ado, let us just look at a topic here on this morning. I like to do this once a year during this time of the year, back to school, because I play on that, back to school. Schools go back in August, right, September. Some high schools go back in July. I cannot imagine that. When I was in school, it was the first Tuesday after Labor Day. But now some schools are going back in July at that early. So this time of year back to school, so just kind of like play on that and then look at a Bible subject matter that we should all think about, right? Remember 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21, prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. 1 Peter chapter number 3, verse number 15, we remember what the Bible says, but sanctify the Lord God in your heart and be ready to give a reasoned defense and answer. So everyone is asking you for the reason of hope within you with meekness and in fear. Do you think so? Let me just start with that question. You see back here on the screen that we have the existence of God. Do you think we need to answer that question? The question.
The fact that we're all here would signify that we all believe in the existence of God.
Okay, that's true. But do we need to give a reasoned defense?
I think we need to be prepared to give one that others who may not believe in the existence of God.
Great answer. Anybody else?
Ezekiel tells us that we are to speak whether others hear or refuse to hear.
Okay, absolutely. Anybody else before we move on? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. I had it on.
It's fighting between the two.
Okay. Now, is that too loud? Is that too loud? Because I'm hearing myself echo. Okay. All right. Okay. So the existence of God, right? So you're correct. It is a part of the whole counsel of God. Acts chapter number 20, verse number 27. Remember what Apostle Paul said there? For he shut not to declare the whole counsel of God. We like to say in preaching from A to Z. I mean, it's good that we know when the church began. Acts chapter number 2, AD 30, in the city of Jerusalem. It's good that we know that. We get a lot of lessons on that, though, don't we, in the Lord's church? We get a lot of lessons on baptism. And brethren, by me saying a lot, I'm not criticizing because we need to get them, okay? But we get these lessons because we understand these as a part of the whole counsel of God. We understand that we need to use only vocal music in worship, and we get a lot of lessons on that. We need to have lessons on grace. We need to have lessons on mercy. We need to have lessons on forgiveness. We need to have lessons on love. We definitely need to have the lessons on evangelism and assembling with the saints, and we do. But sometimes what gets lost is, sometimes we call it apologetics, but it just gets lost. So sometimes with congregations, with our young people that we know are being indoctrinated with thoughts that are evolutionary, we know whether it be junior high or elementary or high school, of course, post-secondary education, we know that. And how are our young people going to be able to combat this? Are they getting it in the home? Well, some are, right? Some are getting it in the home. If you had to guess how many congregations on average do lessons on apologetics, what would you say that would be through a calendar year?
Who said 2? Okay. Anybody else? Lessons on this, being able to demonstrate the existence of God. And by no means is this going to be exhaustive. It's not, right? We'll have time, right? We'll have time for it to be exhaustive. But how many lessons do you think the average church member gets on this? Especially, we know that our young people really need to get lessons on this. I think the local church can certainly do well. I know we have brotherhood sites, okay? We have the Christian Courier. We have Apologetics Press. And those are great organizations. I'm subscribed to all of them. And I love getting my emails indicating that I got another lesson to look at from Apologetics Press or the Gospel Christian Journals. But how many times do you hear them in a local work or have a class dedicated to it?
Almost never.
Okay. So when you guys said 2, that's pretty good. Because in most congregations, the answer is 0. 0. So again, it's something that's part of what I like to do. I am not Kyle Butt, okay? I'm Apologetics Press, so I am not on that level. So, but what I'm trying to do is just at least introduce it, and then I have other sites, brotherhood sites that I certainly recommend, and then I like to do a class on it once a year, a quarterly class on it, because there's so many things we can do with Christian evidences, right? So I was told this should work, and it does. I'm always happy when it works. Okay, so the existence of God. So again, we're just going to look at just these 2. You guys familiar? Any of you raise your hand. You familiar with both of these arguments? Adam, we're going to keep calling on you down. Okay. He said, yes, sir. I mean, Noah. I don't know why I called you Adam. Please forgive me. Noah. Yes, sir.
I've heard those words before, but I don't know the details of the
Okay. Okay, great. I forgot your name, so please forgive me. Nathan? Okay, yes, sir. You had your hand up.
So I only know a little bit about it because my boy that's at Reed is taking a class on it right now. He was telling me a little bit about it. So it's very little.
That's a nice son, isn't it? So he's telling you these things about it. So again, we will just look at these briefly. Again, brother, I've done this year alone. I've done this presentation about 5 times. And I tell people, look, this is a part of the Word of God. Okay, please, we're not leaving the Word of God. So we're going to demonstrate that this is actually in the Bible. Now, the exact words, no. The late Thomas Warren used to say that everything the Bible teaches, it teaches us either explicitly or implicitly, right? So explicitly, right, it's precise words, right? Then implicitly, it's what God implied in man and first. So we know that these things are there in the Word of God. So let's look at this. And really, it's called intelligent design, but wouldn't it be more precise to say that if it has design, doesn't design exhibit intelligence? But we will call it intelligent design. So the biblical foundation for the existence of God. So you see on the left that I have the ball that's in the front is in motion. What is it about to do if we were to let this play? What is that ball about to do? It's about, and what's going to happen when it strikes the next ball? Okay, and how do we know that that's going to happen? So, okay, so one of the laws of science, right? Or the scientific method, right? It's got to be provable, it's got to be testable, okay? So we have seen that this can happen. So we all can reasonably conclude that that ball, if it were to be released, it's going to strike. And what's going to keep not happening with that? Will they keep being in motion for a while? Okay, okay. So we are looking at what we would call the cosmological. This is just a very crude example of it here, in looking at the existence of God. So the same thing, we've all called the domino effect. Why do people call it the domino effect? Because what? So it's causality. So what is causality? Yes, something caused that to happen. So, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. Go ahead. Okay, so let's kind of like stop here for a moment. So why is that so important with us Christians and looking at the existence of God and then looking at causality, and especially when we are looking at a world that, for the most part, like if you YouTube something on YouTube and you just wanted to put in the origins of the universe, what is the percentages of it being from an evolutionary standpoint? What if you had to put a percentage of it? Yeah, pretty high, right? Yeah. Okay. It is interesting because this is where our world is, right? For the most part. But we didn't just get here, right? We've been here for years, right? Anybody in here? Well, okay, let me rephrase this. Okay, so I'll state it this way. So I am a Trekkie, okay? Anybody know what I mean when I say I'm a Trekkie? And I'm talking about TOS, the original Star Trek, okay? I'm not talking about Deep Space or Star Trek 2, okay? I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about Captain Kirk and Spock, okay? And McCoy and Uhura, okay? That's what I'm talking about, okay? And, of course, we all know the best movie there is The Wrath of Khan. But anyway, so when you... And I didn't notice this when I was watching it as a kid. I didn't catch it. But as I grew up, and then as I started in 1994 in Atlanta, Georgia, Bert Thompson came to the Piedmont Road Church of Christ. And if you guys know Apologetics Press, they do those seminars. And he did a weekend seminar. And that weekend seminar changed me forever with reference to this. Because he went in and he talked about things. And an example was used of how we are being indoctrinated and not realizing. But isn't that the whole point of indoctrination? You don't let people know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, but they don't know what you're doing. We were being indoctrinated with evolutionary thought, even in my Star Trek. Star Trek is full of evolution. Did you guys realize that? Those of you who are Trekkies? We can't get warp speed, right? You know that, right? The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, right? Okay? Warp speed claims to go beyond that, but we all know that from a scientific standpoint, you cannot ever go faster than light, right? So you got these things, but there was so many other things. There was a line in the Star Trek movie, Wrath of Khan, where McCoy said, in reference to Genesis, he said, well, according to myth, the earth was created in 7 days. And he even had that wrong because God didn't create the earth in 7 days, did he? So, I mean, but I was like, no, not Star Trek 2. Star Wars, same way. Any of the, whether you DC or Marvel Comics, I'm sorry, okay? And I like some of those movies, right? But they were full of evolutionary thought. Do we guys think about that? That when we are watching a TV show or watching a movie, that we are seeing evolution being indoctrinated into our lives? So is it any wonder that if you do an engine search, 90% of it's going to be evolution? I'm not even saying Darwinian evolution because that's pretty much been disproved for the most part, but just, the micro and then macro evolution, we can, I'll be understanding that micro evolution occurs within species, right? But macroevolution, no. But these are the things, Jurassic Park. That's another one. It's not even a trilogy anymore, is it? It's like, how many movies are now in Jurassic Park now? About? I don't know, but that's all evolution. So it's good for us to be able to argue this, and by argue, I mean there is one side saying one thing, another side saying something else. I need to present an argument. That's Jude 3, right? Earnestly contend for the faith. That's what the word contend means. So, brethren, even my point is we can take modern society, we can take these, and we can transition these into evangelism. Because we can say, this is what that movie taught. But did you know this is what the Bible actually teaches on that? So I'd say let's use it as a win. So understanding the laws of cause and effect, understanding God's cause and effect to a biblical creation. Galatians chapter number 6, verse number 7. Anybody know what that text says there? If you haven't, go ahead and read it. And we're also going to look at Genesis 1:1. We're going to look at John 1:1. We're going to look at Psalm 19:1. What does Genesis 6 and 7 say? Whoever has that, please read it. Galatians 6:7. Galatians 6:7. Galatians 6:7.
Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For
So God is even telling us here there's a causality. Okay, so there's the law of causality is not only in the material world, but it's also in the spiritual realm as well. Okay, so let us look at this. This is just a basic definition of causality, right? Every material effect has an adequate cause which is anterior and superior to it. Everybody agree with that definition, that root definition? Every material effect has an adequate cause, which is anterior and superior. So let's kind of like break that down. What is a material effect? Anybody? What would be a material effect? Every material effect. Okay? So matter and mind, right? There's matter and mind, right? Okay? So every material effect in a closed system, every material effect has an adequate cause. What would be the material effect of taking a pitcher of water and pouring it on the floor? What would be the effect? Floor would be, how do you know the floor would be wet? Because of water, right? And this is reproducible, right? This has been, so we see it. Now, it's reproducible in a scientific lab, but it's also reproducible in our home, right? When we accidentally, right? And you know you have to clean up. So now, if I had a pitcher of water and there's a water puddle that's large, that's an adequate reason to believe that that pitcher caused that. What if I had a small, like, remember those little communion cups we used to use? What if I had that water and the water that poured on the floor? Would that be an adequate cause for that puddle to be that large? No. Okay, so this is cause and effect. Every material effect has adequate cause, which is anterior, which means before, right? And superior, which is greater than it. So now, how does that play into the existence of this earth / universe? We are here. Remember, some people used to argue, well, we're not actually here. This is an illusion. Y'all remember people used to argue that? False. Okay. So the fact that we are here. So the effect is who? We are we mind or are we matter? We are matter. And if we don't believe that, just when we pass from this life, what happens to our physical bodies? Okay, it's because we're matter. Okay, so it's going to decay. Okay, so if we are here, the earth is here, the universe is here, what caused it? So that's why we need to make sure that we are up on our P's and Q's with reference to that. So before we move any further, again, that definition. Everybody have any questions on it, any comments on it? On causality, also known as law of cause and effect. And we're gonna connect this all to God. So cosmological origin, cosmos. Anybody know what the word cosmos means? Cosmos, the world, universe. Okay. Anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, so again, we already looked at that. So Genesis 1:1. So this is cause and effect, right? In the beginning of what? In the beginning.
It's the beginning of creation. It's not God's beginning, but it's the beginning of creation.
Absolutely, because we're gonna get to God here in a moment. But yeah, man, why does time always go by so fast? Now we only got a few minutes left here. We haven't even gotten deeper into this yet. So in the beginning, like how the Hebrew word that is used there, in the beginning. Now Moses is writing this after the fact, right? He's writing this after the fact. But Moses is recorded just like in John 1, in the beginning, right? Was the Word, and what? The Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God. And by Him, all things were made. Without Him was not anything made that was made. Same thing here in Genesis 1. In the beginning for us, because since you brought up God, so He's known as the primal mover or the uncaused first cause. Okay? So in the beginning of time, in this dimension, right? Because God is not bound by time and space. So think about that. He is the eternal one. Exodus chapter number 3, verse number 6, when Moses said to God, speaking to the bush, obviously, what shall I tell him your name is? And God says, I am. And have we studied what that phrase means, I am? I am. It is, yes, sir.
Eternal present tense.
Yes, sir. The self-existing one. The uncaused first cause. God has no beginning. God has no ending. Eternality is God. So this is what Moses is writing about. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So God is the first cause. He's the uncaused first cause who brought everything to existence. Hebrews 11:3, by faith we understand that the world, now like in the Greek language here, but it's talking about, okay, so it's not just the earth, but it's our solar system, if you will, the Milky Way, and then it's the universe, and then how many galaxies do they say we have? I mean, last estimate was 200 billion galaxies. Okay, I mean, we have all these galaxies, and the Bible says God literally, and we know God here is the one we call the second person of the Godhead. So he just ex nihilo, right? He just spoke it out of nothingness. And then there it was. And doesn't that blow your mind, or is it just me? Anybody? Yes, I can. I don't know if you can. I mean, we have the Hubble, and now we have the James Webb, and they are traveling through space, right? And James Webb, obviously, that's the more newer one. So it's giving us pictures of the universe. I'm sorry, of the solar system that is I mean, I just saw something this last week, and they were talking about we are just, I mean, the moons of Saturn, or we are just discovering these things, but they've always been there since when? God brought them in existence back in Genesis. They're not new planets, right? They're not new. Just because we are discovering them now doesn't make them new. So if you think about the age of the earth, so what do we hear about the age of the earth and universe? Oh, it's ever growing, right? When I was a kid, they said, "Oh, the Earth is 250 million years old." Man, they've sped past that. What's anybody know what the latest is that they say how the age of the Earth is? It's in the billion. Yeah, it's in the billion. Give or take a billion here, billion there, right? I mean, this is what they're saying. But if we told you what the Bible says, the beginning, where would we place the age of the earth / universe? Less than 10, if we follow the biblical record. So there's more things, but we leave it at that. So again, so this is the cause and effect. So the concept of it. So understanding causality. Causality describes the relationship where one event causes another to occur. We established that. The chain of causes cannot extend infinitely into the past without a starting point. In other words, we have had to have a starting point. Nothing from nothing gives us what? But see, that's evolution. Evolution teaches us that nothing was there and then something happened. Non-living gave rise to living. That's evolution. Anybody believe that? Now, we got the vast majority of people who do believe that.
Well, it goes back to the concept that before you can't replicate that.
non-living, never gives rise to, but people are teaching this. That there was nothing there. Then all of a sudden, remember they've kind of backed off from the Big Bang, right? They're trying to say, well, we see some flaws in that, and we see some flaws in Darwinian evolution. They're not totally abandoning it, but they've made some modifications. So, but you have to think about that, brother. So it's, how did the universe come into existence, right? It's either, she's eternal, right? She created herself, she's eternal, or evolution is correct, she just appeared. Or the third option is she was created. So which of these options is the most plausible? Which one of these options is the most reasonable? Because that's where we are at in our society right now. Some still hold that the universe is self-created, created itself. And then things just randomly happened. And then those who say that the Big Bang happened, things just randomly happen where they fall into place, where it looks like the universe is so finely tuned. It just happened. Or could it be that a creator created it? Okay, at first cause exists that is uncaused, acting as the origin of all subsequent effects. So, God affirms, Genesis 1:1, and can somebody please get Psalm 19:1, please, Psalm 19:1. Genesis affirms that God is the originator of the heavens and the earth and supporting the first cause. And then Hebrews 3:4, every house is built by someone, but he that calls everything or built all things is God. What does Psalm 19:1 say? Psalm 19:1.
The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands.
Okay. I love how the psalmist is telling us there, look up. How many stars on a night when we have lots of stars, how many stars can anybody say you can count? What if I told you there are more stars in the universe than there is sand on our beaches? Would you believe that? Yeah. Okay. So the psalmist says, just declare. So there is things in the Bible that is special revelation, and then there's divine revelation. And when God gives us a revelation, like the earth, for example, God is telling us, look up at it, because each star represents a light that we are seeing, that is a star which God simply spoke into existence, and there it was. And God is saying, these are just, remember back in those biblical times, did they have telescopes like what we would later have? So they could see on a good night, they can see the moon. They could see the bright star that's shining, and the brightest star that always shines in our solar system is what? Venus, right? The planet Venus. So they could see that. And the Bible was telling them, look up at these things and behold them. They are examples of God's greatness. Just looking at how we are 93 million miles away from the sun. We are the perfect distance from the sun, aren't we? What would happen if we were either a little closer or a little farther away from the sun? If we were a little farther away, what would happen? If we were closer, seems like that was done intentionally, doesn't it? The moon is 242,000 miles away from the earth, and yet it's affecting us in so many ways, right? That we can have the 4 inches. What do we have from the moon? Tides. Well, have you guys ever done a study on the importance of tides in the sea? Okay, so you can see these things that it's as if they were by design that happened. So it takes us to the next one. But before we go, next one, cosmological. Cause and effect, every material effect must have an adequate cause that's anterior and superior to it. So we are here. We are the effect. What was the cause? God, yeah. Anybody have any questions before we move on to the teleological? Comments, questions? If not, we're going to call on Noah. So, comments, questions? Noah, can you wrap up the cosmological argument?
I'll say you kind of hit on it. I think that definition is very adequate, given the fact that you can say cause and effect, but there is a material cause. Something had to happen. Something sufficient had to happen to make something equally
Yep.
sufficient in its effect. So I think the addition of material and adequate is good. And then the anterior and superior aspect of it, meaning that what had to happen had to come from something that makes sense.
Yep. Has to be, right? I mean, we're just, Wayne Jackson had an article in Christian Courier years ago, and he talked about the human mind, the human body, how we are so wonderfully made. He took it from Psalm 139. Encourage you guys to go on Christian Courier and read that. Shows you, it's basically taking us to this here, the teleological argument here. So, I'm sorry, I did right, so I can't go back. Okay, so the universe exhibits complex structures that appear orderly rather than random, hinting at purposeful design. So we all agree with that, right? Our universe, we just talked about the sun and the moon. It's not, okay, yeah, you can say it's just random, right? Got people say these things are just randomly happening. No intent behind it. They're just randomly happening, but they're happening in such a way that it looks as if they exhibit design. But they are saying that's just random. That's just random. Anybody remember the first and second laws of thermodynamics? What does the first law say? In a closed system, what? Matter cannot be created or destroyed, but it can only change forms. So we talk about our bodies, right, turning to dust. What happens? This happened yesterday, I think, when we put a log on a fire. What happens to the log? Does the log disappear? What happens? It changes what? It forms. First law of thermodynamics. So in a closed system, we see that. And by the way, every scientist will tell you, of all the scientific laws, these two are absolutely settled. Okay? Then nobody that's a scientist is going to argue this, whether they are agnostic or whether they are atheists. Okay? They're not going to argue that. First law. Second law says what? All right. What's it called? Also called the law of what? Oh. You were doing so well. Law of entropy, right? So things tend to go from order to what? Disorder, right? So things seem to be winding down. Our universe is exhibiting these two laws. So if our universe is winding down, then what happened in the past? It was at one time wound up. Y'all remember those little toys we used to have as kids? You wind them up. Y'all didn't have those in Iowa or those only in Ohio, okay? Okay, you wind those toys up, and then they just slow down. So somebody wound the universe up. Now, did the universe wind itself up, or did it just randomly happen, or did somebody wind it up? It had to be wound up, yeah. Okay, so that's why it's good to remember these laws. So, teleological argument, if the Earth universe evidences design, then it must have a designer. The Earth universe does evidence design. The Earth universe has a designer. And not only Earth universe, but I also use us as human beings. Yeah. DNA. Now, don't ask me to break down what that long word is. But DNA, what is basically, they have found what DNA basically is. Anybody in here are write computer codes? Okay. So what is basically then, what is DNA then? See what he said? Now, every code that is written has what? Somebody who what? And he designed it, right? So it doesn't just randomly happen, is that correct? In your field, nobody's just randomly coming up with codes? What if somebody told you that they are? Well, people are telling us an evolutionary thought that, you know what, nobody wrote it. It just happened. It just happened. DNA, yeah, everybody's DNA just happened to be a certain way, and then the amino acids in it, and then it just randomly happened. All the protein that's in there, it just randomly happened. Does anybody believe that? I mean, they've said DNA, everybody's DNA is different too, right? Everybody has a different, even twins born to the same parents have different DNA. It's as if that happened by design. What are the odds of these things just randomly happening? Anybody? You have to take a guess. Earth, universe, DNA. But this is the teleological argument. Again, intelligent. Oh, I'm sorry. I was told I can't go back, right? Because if I go back, it throws everything off. Okay, I was. Okay. Okay. The Bible emphasizes God's role as a creator and designer in the universe, showing intentional design. Romans 1:20 explains that God's invisible qualities are evident through his creation, supporting the argument from design. Now, back then, they didn't know about DNA, did they? They didn't know about fingerprints, right? Everybody's fingerprint is different. If you don't believe me, just ask the FBI, okay? Everybody's fingerprint is different. It's a design, okay? Where did this concept of design come from? Did it randomly happen? Or was there a being that gave it design? A being, right? Who is that being? God, right? So that's why, brethren, when we just look at this, now you might say, well, we haven't gone in depth. You're right. We don't have time, first of all. Okay. But this is just things that we can look at to just kind of help us teach what our kids, teach our grandkids, to ask for your local congregation, hey, can we have more now in-depth studies on these so that we can be better equipped to face not by hostile, I'm just meaning in terms of argument, to face a hostile world that says, if you don't believe in evolution, you're what? Crazy, yeah. Crazy, dumb, yeah. That's you guys coming from a creation standpoint? So it's just something for us to just think about. And we have people, every congregation that I taught this in, like our brother back here, there's been somebody who's either writes code or somebody that's an engineer, right? Or a study biology. And they look at those, am I right, brother? And you have to say that there has to be some sort of design or designer behind these things. Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Unless now some people make code from AI, but someone made the AI.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So that exhibits that. So any thoughts, brethren? Any comments? Any questions as we wrap things up?
One of those famous analogies for the theological argument is the concept of a watchmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I looked it up. I didn't want to misspeak. So the complex design of the universe implies a designer, just as a complex watch implies a skilled watchman.
Right.
If you were to be walking along the beach and find a watch, you wouldn't assume that it assembled itself by chance. You would assume that it was placed there by someone who created and designed it and put it together.
Right.
It's not just going to happen by chance.
So great point. So why do we think people are they holding on to evolution because they just don't want to believe in the existence of God? Because if we just stop back and just say, okay, I'm going to be completely objective here. Okay, I'm not going to have any biases. I'm not going to have any presuppositions. I'm just going to be completely objective here. Which is most reasonable? Like you said, with the analogy of the watch. Did the watch or the computer or AI, did it just create itself? Or did it have a designer? Now, people that believe in evolution, they don't want to concede this point, do they? So what do they have to do then? Because they just can't admit that there is a God. Yes.
I think the interesting thing about them not being very God, they do
Evolution to me is a religion. Yeah. And pseudoscience, I'm sorry, I meant to say this at the beginning. I know we only got 2 minutes left. We all know that true science is never in disagreement with the Bible, right? Law of biogenesis, right? We saw law of cause and effect, okay? It's never in disagreement with the Bible. But pseudoscience, yes. So that's why you get theistic evolution, or people who believe that Genesis chapters 1 through 10 is a myth. So true science is our friend in that sense, yes.
So I don't think that it's possible to be completely objective, because we're made up of DNA, but we have spiritual and material surroundings that affect how we come out. And I believe that apologetics, or learning to defend our faith, or being prepared to give an answer, is something that we are supposed to prepare our children for as we walk along the road and teach them these things. It happens in the family. And if we are not teaching them these things, they are not going to be able to distinguish what is right by God's word from what they're hearing in the world, and the great influence that the schools and the programming and the books and all of the different informational outlets that the world has to teach our children and us evolution. So if we're not strong in God's word and understanding how it affects our everyday life and who we are, we're never going to recognize evolution in Star Trek or in our kids' little cartoons. And if we're not, so it's not total, it's evangelism in terms of raising our children, but going out into the world, it's really more being strong in our faith and encouraging one another when we come together and we study these things and we know these things, so that the world doesn't change us or take us away from God. Absolutely. Well, thank you all. We have to stop here because we are at our time. So again, you guys have been a great class on this morning. Appreciate all of you guys' comments and questions. Thank you all so much.